Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
It's The In Show, Australia's only show dedicated to innovation from Adelaide, Australia, and across the globe.
Hi, this is David Grice and Troy Sincock, and this show has proven to be really inspirational. It's all about startups and entrepreneurs, people that see that they can really benefit other humans by solving a problem that really, has impact on their daily lives.
Indeed, and the stories are the things that really are compelling for me. And I would never have thought when we started doing the In Show around 9 months ago that we would be talking to such incredible people from all over the globe.
Yeah, the journey that people have to go through from coming up with the initial idea to then, making their product or service a real thing and recognised by, not just local people, but often on the other side of the world, really takes something. And, no matter how well planned they are, inevitably when things are in motion, there's stuff that pops up, and how willing people have been to share the hurdles they've encountered through their journey has been really remarkable.
Yeah, look, I think the thing for me that has surprised me the most is that the amount that I've learned just from hearing what people are going through. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur myself. I've got startups. I've got all sorts of things going on in my life. And for me, the benefit that I'm receiving just by talking to these people is impacting the way I go about doing the other things that I do.
What I like about it too, it's quite transferable. It's not just about business. Some of the lessons we're learning can be applied to your everyday life as well. Today's show is no exception. We're going to have an extraordinary conversation in just a moment. Now, if you and your friends have been listening to the In Show and your friend is complaining that we're not doing anything, that might be because they subscribe to the old In Show. Have them return to Apple Podcasts to keep listening to the In Show podcast and resubscribe.
Now, Troy, on the show today, I can't wait to hear what this guy's going to share with us. Derrick McManus, he was a sniper, he was a special ops diver and a counter-terrorist operative with the elite staff force within the South Australian Police Department. Then in 1994, something happened that changed his life.
And look, for some people, it would have ended their lives. And it's quite extraordinary. His life up until a certain point looked a certain way, and then it was just changed forever. And he could never have seen it coming. Yeah, look, I mean, the way this guy's been able to turn his life into now something that's giving back to others is nothing short of an incredible story. And, some of the lessons that he's learned, he's now imparting into entrepreneurs and startups and, helping them ride that roller coaster from the idea to taking that out into the global marketplace. Here's just a little of what Derrick McManus has for us later on the In Show.
The experience certainly shocked me at the time, and I felt ridiculous. I felt like an idiot because I was doing something which was completely inexplainable. And there was a shockwave that went up through my body, all the way through to the top of my head. And you know how when you step into a bathtub, a ripple goes from one end of the bath to the other and then it comes back down? The shockwave then passed back slowly down through my body.
That's Derrick McManus. More from him shortly. But now here's Claire with more in news, including a story about how a set of noise-cancelling earbuds could drastically improve your life. What have you got for us, Claire?
Thank you, David and Troy. This week I'll be talking about why NASA is trying to develop food menus for a trip to Mars. But first, a wearable that improves the lives of people with epilepsy has become the first ever smartwatch to be approved by the FDA in the US. The medical-grade technology is called Embrace, and its purpose is to detect epileptic seizures. Although it looks more like a fashion accessory, it could potentially save lives. When the device detects the user is having a seizure, it glows red and alerts the nominated caregivers by sending a message and giving them a call. So if the user is home alone and they experience a seizure, their next of kin are notified. This gives people living with epilepsy more independence and confidence. It simply tracks the user's sweat levels, which are an indicator of stress and brain activity that occurred during the onset of a seizure. The accompanying app keeps this data as well as information about the user's activity and sleep patterns, which can be helpful for neurologists. Now, the developers are looking to improve the technology so it can predict a seizure before it even happens. NASA is currently trying to create a menu for a planned 3-year trip to Mars in the 2030s. But without a reliable and nutritional menu, the trip may never go ahead. Why? Well, creating a menu for space travel isn't exactly easy. The food has to be solid enough so it doesn't break apart and damage important equipment. It has to be nutritional, high calorie, tasty, and full of vitamins to ensure the crew can function properly. And it has to have a long enough shelf life so it doesn't spoil. Otherwise, food poisoning and other illnesses could have a huge impact on the mission. At the moment, the International Space Station receives food supplies a few times a year, but this supply system only works for missions that last 12 months. Because the trip to Mars is so long, NASA says they have to develop a menu consisting of food that has a shelf life of 5 years. Currently, this isn't possible. So, NASA is experimenting with new preservation techniques, different oxygen-resilient wrapping, and new types of moisture. What they discovered during their research could increase how far humans can travel in space. Are you sick of everyday noises wreaking havoc on your ears? Well, there's now a potential cure for that. A Finnish startup company called Quiet On has developed a set of noise-cancelling earbuds that could drastically improve your life. Although they were mainly created to block out the sound of your partner's snoring, they have many other uses because they cancel out low-frequency sounds. That means you can enjoy a relaxing commute to work on the bus or train, a peaceful walk down a bustling street, a calming meditation session, or a quiet workspace. The lightweight earbuds are tiny enough so they can fit into your ear without the uncomfortable pressure of normal earplugs. And you can give one of them a tap to swap from noise-cancelling mode to hearing mode. Plus, they only need to charge for an hour to reach a maximum battery life of 24 hours. They're expected to become commercially available soon, but for now, you can only buy them on the crowdfunding website Indiegogo for about $150. Imagine the difference these could make on your life. And that's what's in news this week.
Thanks, Claire. Well, that sounds like a great idea to me. Wouldn't it be wonderful just to shut out the world when you want to and have it be even more, vibrant when you want it to?
Absolutely. I mean, my best friend when I'm on a long international flight is my noise-cancelling headphones. And I've got to tell you, I have never experienced travel to be so comfortable, apart from obviously the seats, what can you do about that? But from an audio perspective, having noise-cancelling headphones is just an absolute revolution because it just shuts down the noise of the plane and, people around you, and it just enables you to stay in your zone and be just where you need to be.
And so what impact has that had when you travel now?
Well, I feel like I can rest a lot better. I feel like when it is time to go to sleep, I don't turn my headphones off. I keep them in the noise-cancelling mode. I might be just listening to a little bit of music as I'm drifting off to sleep or whatever. Or often I'll just unplug them but just keep them on my ears so that it still cancels out anything around me and just helps me realise that no one else is there.
So the earbud is just a more sort of mobile way of doing it, a little bit more discreet. You don't have to have, the thing hanging over your head and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And I think that's the miracle of these small earbuds. But there's so many things going on in the world of headphone manufacture at the moment. And I've seen a company that's based in Sydney that has created a set of headphones that basically do a hearing test when you first put them on. And they're able to actually understand how you hear. So the frequencies that are the best frequency in your ear and the worst frequencies. And then what happens is because the headphones learn how you hear, they're then able to apply an algorithm across what you're listening to enable you to hear it in the most pristine way that you possibly could in your ears.
So, for example, if you don't hear a whole lot of, lower end frequency because, you have a little bit of ear damage, this will compensate for that and you start hearing things you couldn't hear before.
That's exactly right. So if you can imagine for the first time putting these headphones on and you're hearing your favourite piece of music and then all of a sudden you're hearing stuff that you'd never heard before, it's because of the way these headphones work. In fact, they demonstrated it to me by showing me a guy who had a left ear where he would only hear 10 or 15%. His right ear would only hear 80%. And these headphones, as soon as he put them on, that was able to balance that up so that he was hearing pure stereo for the first time ever.
Wow. I mean, that would change someone's life. Their experience of the world would just change forever.
Let alone their experience of music and some of the things that they, absolutely passionate about. But being able to hear the full recording for the first time, could you imagine the impact?
Well, I feel like I've got a purchase on the horizon. It's David Grice and Troy Sincock talking innovation on The In Show. You can check us out at theinshow.online, Facebook, and follow The In Show on Twitter. I'm really enjoying being a podcaster. My former career was in radio, but now podcasting has given me a freedom that I didn't know existed. And David, you've been behind microphones, but certainly not on the radio before.
No, absolutely not on any form of of spoken communication, certainly singing and playing music and creating music, but this is just something I'm absolutely loving.
What's been incredible is through the In-Show, we've been able to access people all over the world and be able to contribute to the lives of thousands of people in 48 countries, from Yemen to the United States of America. What we're seeing is it's a great way to be able to connect with large numbers of people in all sorts of locations. So if you own a business that has many employees, or perhaps only a few employees that are mobile, or maybe you have a startup and you're looking to really get on the front foot with your communication to let people know what you're up to so they can contribute to your business, podcasting and on-demand audio is a great way to do that.
Most people sort of look at video and YouTube as a really effective way to communicate. But one thing that does is it demands your entire attention. You have to watch the screen as well as be listening to what the messaging is. And the great thing about on-demand audio is that you can be multitasking. You can be doing so many different things. You can be driving a car. You can be reading your emails. And it just opens up a lot more access to being able to hear and understand relevant messages.
And what I realised is men can multitask too.
We can.
Who knew? So if you see real value in on-demand audio or podcasting as part of your communication strategy, whether you're wanting to push out what you're doing to a wider community or just really engage those people that are working directly with you, perhaps your clients, we can help. And we'd love to play a part in helping you reach the people that will help your business be most effective.
Yeah, please shoot us an email at david@theinshow.online or troy@theinshow.online, and we would love to help you.
Whether you're here in Adelaide where we do the In-Show or on the other side of the world, we'd love to play a part in your business's success.
Download the Phoner app before you head to your next event. Find people easier, market yourself better, and get connected using Phoner. That's spelled P-F-O-N-R. Phoner. Available in the App Store now.
Hi, I'm Ashley Manuel from Growing with Gratitude, and you're with Troy and David on The In-Show.
It's David Grice and Troy Sincock on The In-Show. Subscribe to iTunes and listen to The In-Show podcast. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
The In-Show.
Derrick McManus was a sniper, a special ops diver and counter-terrorist operative with the elite Star Force group of the South Australian Police. But then in 1994, something happened that changed his life forever. Fast forward some 20 years, and Derrick is interested in the durability of human performance, presenting workshops and delivering keynote speeches across the country. His work around durability has valuable impact for startups and entrepreneurs taking on that long journey from the idea to then getting their product out to the global marketplace. So what happened in 1994, Derrick?
1994, I was a member of STAR Group, the Special Task and Rescue Group in the South Australia Police. We were asked to go and arrest a guy who had a warrant for his arrest. The warrant was for 197 counts of fraud. Not something you would normally associate with violence, but we knew this guy's history. We'd been involved in a couple of jobs with this guy before where he'd actually threatened to shoot police in the past. So we knew there was a potential for something to go wrong. However, he had never done anything of violence. He'd made the threats, he'd intimidated people, and this is not just police, this is people in the public as well. So we knew there was a potential, but he never actually did anything. But we were asked to go and arrest him. We went to his house, which is a farm in the Barossa Valley out in Uriupta. We went to the front door. We were wearing full police uniform and police flak vests because there was always that danger he may start shooting, so we went well prepared. We knocked on the front door, called out that we're the police and we wanted to speak to him, but he wasn't answering the door. However, we had positioned a sniper in the bush about 20 minutes before we arrived, just so that sniper could watch the house, watch the offender. We knew where he was. We knew the right time to approach so that we didn't miss him, we didn't spook him or anything else like that. So we knew he was inside. We knew he should be answering the door. We knocked again, we called again. Again, there was no answer. And at this stage, I've moved down the side of the house to look at a glass sliding door at the side of the house to see whether we could make an entry to arrest this man without causing any damage. As I got to within about 2 feet of that sliding door, he started to shoot. I was the target. He was using a 7.62 or 308 caliber SKK Chinese military assault rifle. The weapons that the Chinese use when they go to war, the bullets fired are the same the Chinese use when they go to war. He fired 18 times in less than 5 seconds and hit me 14 times in less than 5 seconds.
Wow. I mean, that would just, it just sort of stops life in its tracks at that point. So what was that experience like and what happened next?
Surprisingly, the experience certainly shocked me at the time, bang, immediate shock. I actually didn't feel the impact of the bullets. I didn't feel the pain of being shot. And initially I didn't even hear the sound of gunfire. All I knew was I was falling to the ground all of a sudden for what I thought was absolutely no reason. And I felt ridiculous. I felt like an idiot because I was doing something which was completely inexplainable. And as I was falling to the ground, I looked at that glass sliding door again, and there were small round holes that hadn't been there just a moment before. Then I heard the sound of gunfire. Still hadn't felt the pain, still hadn't felt the impact, but as I was falling, I've looked at these holes, heard the sound of gunfire, and I've actually had a conversation with myself around, Derrick, don't be too upset with yourself, because if you're getting shot, it's quite acceptable to fall over. And I don't make that up and I don't extrapolate that in any way, shape or form or embellish it. That's exactly what I was thinking. I've fallen to the ground, rolled onto my back, and as I'm falling and as I'm lying on my back, he's still shooting within this 5-second period. And 2 bullets hit my left thigh as I'm lying on the ground. And these 2 bullets seem to take about 30 seconds to hit me. 18 bullets are fired in less than 5. These 2 seem to take 30. The mind has the ability to just analyse every little detail and slow the process down. Lots of people talk about that same experience when they're rolling their car and they can just see things moving around in the car in slow motion. Well, that's exactly what it was for me. Mm-hmm. These 2 bullets just seemed to take 30 seconds. The first one hit me in the left thigh, and there was a shock wave that went up through my body, all the way through to the top of my head. And you know how when you step into a bathtub, a ripple goes from one end of the bath to the other and then it comes back down? The shockwave then passed back slowly down through my body. And then the second bullet hit. And again, it's that bullet in the thigh and a sledgehammer feel. Shockwave up, shockwave back down, and a seemingly 30 seconds to be abusing myself again. I knew I needed to fire back, but before I fired back, I realised I'm shooting along the length of my body and my feet are at the other end of my body. I knew that I needed to get up just a little bit to shoot over the top of my feet. But as I've lifted my upper body up, because I've got a flak vest, weaponry, equipment on my upper body is very heavy, so as I've lifted my upper body up, my feet have come up to counterbalance. And the thought that ran through my head as I was pulling the trigger on that first bullet was, I better not shoot myself in the foot, because if I do, the guys at work would never stop stirring me up for the rest of my life. The words I thought were not quite stirring me up, but slightly more descriptive than that. But for the podcast, I'll use those words. but that's what I thought. The guys will never let me live it down for the rest of my life. And I think I was able to have those thoughts because of what we're going to be talking about tonight. The way that I have looked at, anticipated problems, had a plan in place. If this does happen, this is how I'm going to handle it. And I analogize it to the same experiences when we drive a car. When we first start driving a car, you're a brand new learner, step into the car, mum and dad say, right, drive out the driveway, your hands are on that steering wheel, white-knuckled, you do not want to take it off, you don't want to let that steering wheel slip out of your hands. And then they say, okay, turn right. And you go, okay, I'm going to turn right. No, use your indicator. You mean take my hand off the steering wheel? And it is all that overwhelm because there's so much to do. But because we've done it so well now, so much, we're so used to it, it's just second nature. We don't even think about it. And that's how I prepared myself for the shooting. Certainly Star Group gave us a lot of training, but for this scenario particularly, I'd actually done a lot of visualisation as to how might it feel, how might my body respond, how might I respond emotionally, and if it does happen that way, how will I manage it?
So tell us about that. Obviously, family and all of those loved ones around you as well. I mean, how did you go through that process and include them in that? I mean, obviously you can prepare yourself through all your training, but what about those that are around you? How did you go with that?
It's part of the model for durability that I have. The underpinning philosophy, or as the model is, the golden circle around the outside that holds it all together, is open, honest, confronting conversations. And we've got to have those confronting conversations with ourselves, but with those family around us. And this extends to teams and subordinates. But we've got to have those confronting conversations with those as well. I actually sat down with my wife and had that confronting conversation of, I'm a cop, I'm in Star Group, I may be shot and injured, I may be shot and killed. Now, that was confronting for me to actually have that conversation. To a large degree, it was quite comfortable because I'd already gone through that process mentally already. But for my wife, it was massively confronting. Okay, well, I always knew there was this reality out there, but you mean we're actually going to talk about it now? And I think I'm one of the 1% of police in Australia that have actually had this conversation.
How did it go?
It actually went reasonably well. I don't think she took it with as much reality as I did. And I can't remember the exact conversation, but I remember having that conversation. But I don't think she took it with the same reality. It was certainly confronting, and we had a conversation around, if I die, what would you like to do for the rest of your life? You're going to stay a widow, you're going to get remarried, I give you permission to do whatever you want, live it any way you want. But there was a good conversation around what I wanted her to tell my children about who I was. And that, that brought the tears, and that brought a little bit more reality. But I think it was still one of those things, oh my gosh, this is so big, I really don't want to think about it too much. But for me, it was just an acceptance. I've made a choice. I'm going to put myself in circumstances where these things could possibly happen. I've got to prepare myself for the best chance of outcome by design, rather than just waiting to see what happens and hopefully I'll be able to manage it at that stage, which is what a lot of people do in general life, but certainly as we're going to be talking about tonight with startups, people have great ideas. They know there are some dangers, some things go wrong for other people, but now we'll be right. We'll get into it and hopefully it'll be okay. Rather than saying it's possible, do we have the resources to manage it if it does happen?
How close was it that your wife had to have that conversation with your kids when you were lying there on your back? How close were you to not being able to have this conversation with us?
I was lying on the ground for 3 hours, and for that 3 hours I was constantly monitoring my body, losing blood, closing down, felt my legs going cold, my arms going cold. I was holding onto a pistol for about 2.5 hours so that if the shooter came back out, I was able to protect myself. After 2.5 hours, that fell out of my hand because I didn't have the strength left in my hand to hold it. And at the 1 hour mark of me lying on the ground, the police have got to my wife and said, Derrick's been shot. He's been on the ground for a long time now. Nobody's heard from him. It doesn't look good. So that became a massive overwhelm for her. I was on the ground for another 2 hours, 3 hours all up. And at the 2 hours and 45 minutes mark, my blood supply got so low that every part of my body had closed down, and I consciously accepted the blood was just going to my kidneys, my heart, my lungs and my brain. And then at 2 hours 45, even my vision closed down. And that's when I started thinking to myself, is this it? Because when my vision closed down, it didn't go to shades of grey or black as pragmatic copper had expected it to. My vision actually went to pristine white, absolutely pristine white. And that's when I started thinking, is this what they talk about? Is this the light to God? Is this... and I'm not a religious person, but those thoughts certainly went through my mind. But that's when I start fighting my hardest. And for startups, at that darkest hour is when we've got to fight our hardest. I started moving my body the little bit that I could just to give myself confidence that I had something left. I started speaking out loud to myself and saying, Derrick, don't give up. Derrick, keep on fighting. When our minds are open to possibilities, opportunities and choices, our minds can make marvellous things out of something that might seem insignificant to someone else. As my vision was closing down and my vision's gone to white, there were 2 rifle shots from outside the house. I could still hear the shooter inside. 2 rifle shots from outside. That was absolute confirmation that my mates from Star Group are on their way to get me. Dump of adrenaline into the body, endorphins from the brain probably, and my vision snapped back up to absolutely perfect. I was passing in and out of consciousness for 15 minutes before the boys actually got to me, but that's what that opportunity, that possibility, that little glimmer of hope can do for people.
The fact that you had such awareness and were so aware of what was going on in your body just absolutely blows my mind. I mean, is that part of the training that you had, or was that just something that you had just consciously done? I've got to just stay aware. I've got to see what's going to happen next.
I call it kind of collateral awareness. In Star Group, we are trained to rescue first aid levels. So we can go down to someone that's trapped on a cliff and we can treat them on the side of the cliff and stabilise them. We don't insert cannulas or intubate them or anything else like that, but we can stabilise them. I was also a diver, so underwater recovery, and we're diving down to the deepest depths you can on free dives on oxygen. We don't go into mixed gases, but we learn a lot about the body processes and how to control them, and certainly how to conserve our oxygen when we're at great depths and we're under great stress. So what I did in my preparation, once I'd had this conversation with my wife about, hey, listen, I may be shot and injured, I may be shot and killed, I then said to myself, if I get shot and injured, what would I like to do as an absolute perfect response? And then I brought all those resources together and said, actually, from what I know about that, I'll be able to do this. From what I know about that, I'll be able to do this. From what I know about how I performed back there, I actually want to do it better than what I did back there. So what would better look like? Okay, let's put that together. And I then had this contingency plan for both absolute perfection, what it would look like for absolute perfect outcome. then I also accept that it may not be perfect. It may be down the other end of this continuum. And how do I influence that to get it closer to that perfect end? I never expected to get perfection, but, we've got to know what perfect is so that we've got something to aim for.
I love that because, in my own experience, the last thing I want to think about is the negatives. You're excited about an idea and how it's going to change the world, that you believe that it will, and everything's about that forward thinking, very positive sort of stuff. But this notion of the confronting conversation, I think, is something that for me is I've never thought of that before. And whenever the bad stuff happens, it's sort of like I just deal with it and know that my bigger picture is always there and I'm striving for that end. But rather than actually thinking about what may happen, and I think that's just a big part for me right now. That's and I'm sure that there are so many startups out there that are in this same place right now and just thinking about the worst thing that could happen. What you've just shared, just for me personally, has just been revolutionising. It's just amazing. So,
because it seems that much of the support, Derrick, really is there for people kind of along the way rather than the preparation. Okay, I've got the idea, and okay, now before you do everything else, are you prepared for what you're about to step into?
Yep, absolutely. And you said you don't like to think of the negatives, and lots of people say don't hang around with negative people, right? You don't want to talk to negative people. You only want to talk to the positive people, the people that are going to encourage you. I actually have a kind of controversial philosophy for that. I actually kind of like to engage with the negative people. Those people are going to say, you're going to have this problem. It won't work because of this. I have this saying that I put out to people, tell me why I can't succeed. Tell me what my problem's going to be. Because if you can see a problem, I can either say, yeah, I've thought of that and I have a way of managing it, or actually I haven't thought of that, and if that does happen, that's going to destroy me. Or you say, no, actually, you're not looking at it quite the right way. You have a different concept of what I do. And those are the people that, if they can't quite get the same grasp as you do, you've got to allow them to have their opinion, but don't let it affect you. But I do like to engage with those people who can see the problems, because sometimes I can't see all the problems.
But that also gives you another thing to think about how to get around.
Absolutely,
as well. So it builds that.
Yeah, absolutely. If they've come up with this thing that I haven't seen, it's like, great, excellent. I didn't see that one coming. Do I have the resources to be able to manage that as well? So it's vital to engage with those negative people as well. You don't want to engage with them for too long. And you've got to be able to compartmentalise people in your life, because there are some negative family that are always going to be there and you can't get rid of them. But you've got to be able to compartmentalise their thinking and go, okay, I know I'm going to have to listen to this, but I don't have to let it affect me, right? And then just move on and engage with the people who will support you and have the same philosophies and attitudes as you.
I think, sometimes if you're sort of working from your own context and, what you see as a wonderful idea, and perhaps, the people that love you most are just, are going to default to being supportive of you, that really what might be pie in the sky you don't see. And really it could be the difference between you embarking on something that's destined to fail versus actually seeing, oh, hang on, that is going to fail, and what do I need to do? Or maybe I need to come up with another idea or just adjust my plan. But that's actually it's a really smart way of dealing with things.
The concept really crystallised for me when I've got an idea for a startup myself, and it's a TV series which is going to be a combination between Top Gear, Getaway, Man vs. Wild, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, and it's all around, why do I want to do this? Because I want that lifestyle. I'd love to go out and do those things. But anyway, I've got this idea for this TV series, and I was putting it out. Some people in the industry, and they think it's got really good legs based on the backstory to it and the name of the show. But anyway, I put it to my father, and I was talking to my father about it, and my father's going, Derrick, you don't want to do this. No. Just stick with your speaking, stick with your policing. Derrick, you don't want to do this. And we had this discussion over a couple of years, and I just could not convince my father that this would work. And it really, really was getting to me. My father, the one person I'd expect to support me through anything. And my philosophy now comes down to sometimes it's not about what people say, it's the reason that they are saying it. And this crystallised for me when I said, Dad, why are you saying that? And he said, well, Derrick, I've tried a lot of things in my life, and I just couldn't see myself being able to do that, and I don't know whether you could as well. And I said, but Dad, I've got support from this guy, I've got support from that guy, I've got this in place, and I know these processes. And he's gone, yeah, I suppose you've got it, yeah, well, okay, go for it, Derrick. And it really was not what he was saying, it was, what was the thinking behind it? And then we could talk about that thinking behind it.
Because so many ideas would be crushed also that had potential just purely because someone, took something to heart or had an emotional reaction as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that comes down a lot to your own self-esteem and your own ability to believe in your success. For those people with a fragile self-esteem, the smallest little negative comment is going to destroy them. Right, that's it. I'm not going to embarrass myself. I won't have you laughing at me.
Yeah.
But for those people who have a real passion, a real drive for it, they actually don't care what other people think. Their passion will pull them through and carry them through. But you've still got to be open to hearing those things that people say, this is going to cause you to fail. Oh, actually, that little bit resonates for me. I can't shy away from it. I need to deal with it. Because if it does happen, it might just destroy me, and that's the confronting conversation.
Do you find that there are certain types of people that adopt this kind of philosophy quicker than others? I mean, I look at the absolutely gifted people that, write lines of code and make tech work. And those guys, for me, they always look at the problems as opposed to the vision.
Yep.
And their life is all about solving a series of problems, and where they get the biggest satisfaction is the fact that they can solve the problems, as opposed to someone like me, who I look at the big picture, I look at the possibilities and the future of something and the markets that it could go into and all those sorts of things. So for me, looking at this kind of philosophy is going to have a huge impact on the way I conduct whatever I do. But for somebody that's an analytical mind, have you sort of encountered anybody in that mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. There are people that take to this. I'm very fortunate that my son is a code writer. He loves being on the computer. He's writing code for games that are absolutely massive, and he has people streaming online to watch him write code. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. But he is the most positive person, and I bounce a lot of my ideas past him, and he gives me lots of really good ideas. So even those code writers can see possibilities and opportunities, but there are certainly some people around the place that just don't get it at all. They don't like resilience. They just like to have everything planned in place. We are not going to do anything at all until we are absolutely 100% certain that it will work and there will be no problems. In fact, I went to New Zealand to speak to OMV Oil, and I was speaking to one of the executives up there, and he was talking to me about the safety procedures on the oil rig. And he said, if people are performing absolutely perfectly, there will be no safety breaches, there'll be no injuries, there'll be no damage caused to my rig at all. And I said to him, well, that's great, but, you've got weather factors, you've got people who get tired and all that sort of... No. People are not allowed to get tired. If they get tired, they are going to write themselves off and go off shift. And I said, yeah, but people make mistakes. No. People do not make mistakes. They're not allowed to make mistakes. There was no space in his brain for anything other than perfection. And it's those sorts of people that really have a challenge, looking at what are the possible problems that are going to happen in the future, and if they do happen, how will we respond to it now? No, I'm going to eliminate them. They're not going to happen. So there are certainly those people around, and sometimes you just can't change them. The old story, we can't please all of the people all of the time. And for me, it's just about engaging with those people that do connect with me and leaving a seed of possibility sown for those people who are not quite there. Because sometimes we can't convince someone straight away. The next person can't convince them. The next person can't convince them. I rate this. I talk to kids in schools as well. So as a parent, you'll relate that you've been bringing up children. You tell your children, X, Y, Z. Now, come on, X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z. And then they'll go along to school and some big speaker will come in and the speaker will go, X, Y, Z. And the kids will go, I've got that. Dad, why haven't you told me this in my past life? It's just the right person, the right message, the right way at the right time. So I used to try and convince people that this is a good philosophy and they should think about it. And now I just go, well, if you don't get it right now, hopefully you will sometime in the future. So don't give up on them, straight away. We certainly have, good in-depth. I love an in-depth discussion about it. But if they don't get it, I don't lose sleep over it.
It really is putting emphasis on the human skills and how that has, something go from idea to fruition.
Yep.
That's a necessary skill. The idea itself and the technology alone doesn't get the idea complete without all these processes that the business owner, the startup, the entrepreneur has to go through. Because if they fall at any of the hurdle, it doesn't matter how great the technology is, that won't survive without people driving it.
No, absolutely. I I honestly believe that attitude is the most important thing. There's a model that I use in my program called the attitude equation. And attitude, our belief in ourselves, our personal drive, is 90% of our success. 10% of it is the background, the skills, the learning, the intelligence, the courses we've done, the finance. That's all 10%. 90% of success is driven by the people, because there's always going to be hurdles. And if you don't have the passion, particularly if you're doing something because you're trying to prove somebody else wrong or to look good in front of someone else, you'll lose that drive very, very quickly, and then you'll feel like an idiot. But if you've got that real passion, that real drive to do something to help someone else or to achieve something for yourself, then you will drive through most of the problems that you'll ever encounter.
What I love about that, it's a real equaliser, isn't it? It really just goes to show that people that have big ideas that are just fearful that they can't see them to fruition because, they don't have the skills, or, maybe they don't know how to ask, but they really believe in the idea. That equation has you see that any ordinary person with a good idea, with the right attitude, could really see it through.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there have been books written about those people who go into business with absolutely no education, no finance behind them. They just go in with a really great idea. And then because of their passion, people get on board with them. People love passionate people. In fact, most of the reasons that people employ people these days is not so much for their skills, but for their attitude. Right? They may come in with great skills but bad attitude that's going to destroy the business. Come in with few skills but a great attitude, you can train them. You can teach them. So long as they come in with that great attitude, it is going to help you along the way. Having great skills and great attitude is a big bonus, but the attitude is the most important.
Derrick, is there any tips you could leave with us that are just very simple things and steps that people can take to get into this mindset of resilience and durability?
Yeah, absolutely. And those tips would come straight back to that model of durability. And the first one is be very clear of your vision, be very clear of what you want as an outcome at the end, and don't be derailed from that. Certainly if a better idea comes up, yes, go with it, but don't go chasing the shiny things. Be very clear of what the outcome is that you want and be focused on that. Build up your knowledge, right, around what the challenges are, what the opportunities are. Build up your knowledge of your resources that you have behind you, or your experienced, intelligent, and be very aware of what the indicators are that are telling you it's going well or it's going badly, and respond to those immediately. Now, that response may just mean, listen, we know that's happened, but we just need to stay on track with what we're doing, right? And that's a conscious choice. But as soon as that new information comes in, you make a new conscious choice. Yes, this is the right thing to stay doing, or because of that, we need to go X, Y, Z, whichever way we want to. In your planning, everybody talks about flexibility in planning, and as I said before, agility is the most important. But there's an old military adage that there is no plan that will survive encounter with the enemy, because those buggers will do something you don't anticipate and you have to change. So even the greatest military planners know that no plan will survive encounter. It's got to change. But if you know what those indicators are, you can change with agility and have lots of options available to you. Make the right choice and follow that choice. But then once you've gone through that whole process, be really committed to what you want to do. Right? And it is that commitment that makes the big difference. The commitment comes down to attitude. How much are you willing to put into it? Because if there's something that you want to achieve and it's not quite going right, doesn't matter what else is happening around you, look at your commitment and your attitude first. Because if you don't have those two things in place, nothing is going to get driven. You might still succeed, but it'll be maybe more luck or good fortune, or somebody else picks up on your idea and helps you along rather than you driving it yourself. And the last one is obviously be prepared to have those open, honest, confronting conversations. Because if you don't have those, nothing else counts. In fact, who is it? Nelson Mandela says you can't prepare for the future while secretly pretending it's not going to happen. Right? So if you don't have those confronting conversations, you're preparing for nothing, really.
That's fantastic, Derrick. Thanks so much for sharing that with us. And to think that from that event came all this wisdom that can now assist startups and entrepreneurs, it really is magnificent. Thanks so much for joining us on the In Show.
My absolute pleasure, guys. Thanks very much for having me.
Find out more about Derrick and his story and his workshops at derrickmcmanus.com.
Next week on The In Show.
Troy, when we hear about Rotary clubs, we often think of them as these organisations that are a little bit out there and we don't know much about.
You're kind of like a boys' club, you know, where you know something's going on, but you don't really know what's happening.
Yeah. Well, they're part of an international network of business professionals and community leaders, and what they're doing is striving to make the world a better place through practical efforts. So that's things like, you know, we had this disease called polio, and polio was eradicated through a program that Rotary International actually did. And that project, still to this day, passionately supported by somebody like Bill Gates.
Wow.
You know, which is incredible. But what you also might not know is that the Rotary Club of Adelaide has an innovation group. And recently, Rotarians, Rotaractors and their friends spent the morning making artificial hands for victims of war and landmines as part of a project called the Hands On Project. So we're going to hear about that.
Fantastic. Now, if you've noticed the in-show has disappeared from Apple Podcasts...
Heaven forbid.
That is probably because you are subscribed to the old version of the in-show. You know, we're on a whole new platform now. The boys from Adelaide, Liam and Andy, who do Ozcast, are now happily hosting us on their platform, but you have to resubscribe to in-show if that's normally where you access your Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you can go to the Ozcast network, or we'll still be in iTunes. It'll just be a coloured logo, and the black and white one that we were existing with won't be there anymore.
Get on board, and if you enjoy what you're hearing on the in-show, make sure you rate us 5 stars. You can check out more about the in-show at theinshow.online, and we're on Facebook and Twitter as well.
Well, Troy, this show's been one of those ones that's just completely, you know, inspired me in I'm going to apply some of the things that I learnt today in my own life. And speaking of inspiration, we've got some more before we leave, and that's Chester Osborne from Darren Bird Wines, and he's talking about the influence of dreams and the value of pursuing your passion in any business venture.
I think we all dream about things and what we'd like to have done or do. And then a lot of people, including myself, there's lots of other things I've dreamt about that I haven't gone and done. And that a lot of us go, well, that'd take a lot of work and couldn't be bothered, you know, in the end, you know, and half the time you don't even know how much work it's going to take. I think that's actually been an advantage for me, is that I think it's actually everything's a lot easier than it really is. And then when you get into the detail, it's actually quite a lot of detail. But again, being focused on detail, liking detail as part of my nature, then it ends up being more of the fun, not more of a problem, you know? And so that's, I suppose, a good thing. But I think you've got 95% of you saying all the reasons why you shouldn't do something, and then there's that 5% of that, you know, just do it, you know, and you've got to listen to that 5%. It's because that 5% is just the passion of, well, it'll just be great. I just think that's a great idea. That's the only thing you've got really at the beginning, that 5%, and all these 95% of reasons of the time, all the things that could go wrong. Don't focus on any of those. Focus on the 5%.
The In Show, presented by David Grice and Troy Sincock. News by Shannon Corvo and Claire Murphy. Music by Zach Grice. Produced by Jason Walker. Subscribe to the In Show podcast on iTunes. A Dave and the Beanstalk production.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.